Drama is in my DNA. When one door closes, another door is going to be smashed open by Apollo. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Raphael and I'm here to discuss one of the most infamous episodes of the Real Housewives of Atlanta, Season 6, Pillow Talk, and break down what exactly happened that night to lead up to what happened that night and whose fault was it to begin with. So we start the Pillow Talk party at the hotel where Nene is hosting the event at. She has pillows, candles, food. She has everything ready for tonight except for some boxing gloves that they're about to need in a couple of minutes. Cynthia, she's the first guest to show up, and Nene, she's giving her the rundown on who's supposed to be showing up. Cynthia, she's kind of caught off guard when she hears that Natalie and Chris and Kenya are supposed to be there. Why? Because Natalie and Kenya, they bumped heads earlier in the season. If we all remember that Kenya, she accused both Chris and Natalie of having a common law marriage, which means that they're not really married technically on paper or legally. They're just, I guess married in their own world. I'm not even sure they're still married to this day or still together. Regardless, Cynthia, she still voices to Nene, Nene, I just feel like between Kenya and Natalie and Chris, if they all show up together, it's going to be a issue. I'm not really sure if that's a good idea. Nene, she doesn't really care. She just tells Cynthia, honestly, Cynthia, the only thing that I'm worried about is, do we have enough pillows? Of course, Nene's not worried. She knew what she was doing. So the guests start coming in one by one. Portia, she's happy because even though it's supposed to be a couples thing, Nene and production allowed her to show up anyway. So in her confessional, Portia says, I'm so glad that Nene let me bring my plus one, Lauren, my sister, because, I'm single and single people need to have fun too. Candy showed up with Todd, and this is when she had the red hair, so you knew not to play around with her. Peter Centerpeach Thomas, he's always been in the mix, right? But at the time, he was married to Cynthia, so it was only right that he shows up. Phaedra and Apollo, at the time they were married, they also show up. Chris and Natalie, Chuck and Monique, which again, Monique, she was also kind of like a friend of this season. Phaedra, she wasn't too fond of seeing them, especially since Chuck and Candy, they have a past together of dating. So you see where I'm going with this? Like, the more guests that they keep bringing into this room, the more they're all connected and the more the tension keeps rising. Everyone starts taking their seat while Nene goes into the other room to change into her lingerie outfit. Nene comes out and she is a whole different person. She is walking back and forth throughout the entire hotel room as if it's some type of runway show. Like, yeah, so we're about to play a game full of questions. Apollo, stop looking at my legs, Apollo. Candy used to rate my sex game a 2, but guess what? Tonight is gonna be a 10 because I got a couple of balls inside me. Wink, wink. And I'm like, Nene, what's going on? What's happening? Like, does the outfit have you feeling like this? What's happening? Everyone's noticing her change in behavior, and she's also getting irritated. She's upset that Kenya is not there. Why? Because, of course, she needs Kenya to be a valuable player in her mess that she's trying to cause between Natalie and Chris. So as she's pacing back and forth, she tells them that she's irritated right now because there's some guests that decided to be late. Of course, she's talking about Kenya, but Portia, for some reason, Portia was just like, Nene, who are you talking about? Who's late? Like, Portia, open up your eyes and look around. Who's part of this show that's not here right now? Of course, Nene was just like, well, who do you think? Meanwhile, Kenya and Brandon, they're somewhere on the highway trying to get here. Nene's just pacing back and forth. She's pissed off. She's irritated. And her excuse is, oh, well, Kenya, she was mad at the group because we showed up to her event late. So why is she showing up to my event late? And I mean, yeah, I guess it's a valid reason to be upset. But is it a valid reason for you to throw such a huge tantrum like this and be pacing back and forth over Kenya? No. Again, Nene, we all knew what you were up to. So eventually she gets this game on the go. She has a bunch of questions on these cards, right? So she starts giving them out. Portia's the first one to ask a question, so she says, would you prefer your spouse to be passive or aggressive in the bedroom? Cynthia, she lets us know, I would like it if my husband was a little aggressive in the bedroom. And I'm like, ooh, Cynthia, you freak. The next question was, would you mind being around somebody who slept with your spouse at some point in the past? This question was targeted towards Candy because obviously her other ex, which is not Todd, but Chuck, who's also here with his wife, across the room, he's there. So obviously Nene knew what she was doing because she knows about their past. Candy, she notices this, so she rolls her eye in her confessional. She was just like,
I really hope that Nene's not trying to bring up anything between me and Chuck because I'm not okay with that.
So eventually Candy was just like,
I really don't care. I don't really mind. It's a whatever.
so then Cynthia, she asked Peter Center Peach Thomas, Peter, would you mind if, you were around anybody that I slept with? Peter Center Peach Thomas, he was just like, well, I mean, I'm around Leon all the time, so obviously not. Leon, that's Cynthia's ex, and I believe that's the man that she had a child with. So of course, he has no issue with that. The next question was a target at Portia. Would you mind your man being bisexual? Obviously, because the rumors of Cordell, which is her ex-husband, there were rumors that he was gay or bisexual, whatever. Portia notices that this question is too direct at her, so she speaks up and she tells Nene,
I don't really care if my man is bisexual, heterosexual, as long as he's Portia sexual, that's all that matters to me. But don't call me out. Don't call me out for my stuff.
Obviously, she was a little bothered by that because who asked somebody that question, right? So then we get a knock at the door. Who is it? Kenya. Nene is pissed off. She is still pacing all over the place. And then eventually she opens up the door. Kenya, she pops her head in like, hey. And what does Nene do? Nene is so disrespectful because she slams the door in her face and she goes back to playing the game. She was just like, hey, and then slams it. And absolutely not. From that moment right there, that whole it would have been a fight right there. Kenya, of course, though, she's being the bigger person. She walks in it anyway. She was just like, oh, hey, Nene, how are you? You look fabulous. What does Nene say? You don't. Like, so disrespectful. Again, she was just coming at Kenya the second that she saw her. Kenya, she's trying to plead her case like, look, I was late because I was picking up Brandon from the airport. Then we ran out of gas. We had to Uber. We stopped at Taco Bell. We got a Nacho Bell Supreme and everything. And now we're here. Why are you so upset? Nene, she's not trying to hear it. She was just like, okay, what does that have to do with anything? I'm like, Nene, she's trying to give you an explanation. Like, at least listen to the woman, but she wasn't having it. And Kenya, this is one of the most iconic looks of Kenya. Like, I remember watching this first episode when it first aired years ago. I love Kenya's look, like the stockings, the hair, the corset, the bra, just everything about the look. She just looks so good in it. So she's taking off the little robe that she had on to reveal the lingerie underneath. Brandon, he has his red silky pajamas on. They're trying to take a seat. But again, Nene, she just keeps shouting at her like, sit down, sit down, sit down. We're about to play a game. You are late. You are late. You are disrupting everything. If you do not like these questions, you can leave, okay? Big titties. So the game continues and Nene asks, would you feel comfortable if your spouse looked at anybody else besides you in a flirtatious way? Portia, she answered first and she said,
I wouldn't feel comfortable if my husband looked at anybody else besides me.
Nene, she took a shot at Portia by saying, oh, something must have happened in her childhood. And I'm like, Nene, where did that come from? What did Portia do to you tonight? Like, first it was the bisexual question. Now this, what is going on? So then Peter Center Peach Thomas starts putting his foot in his mouth by saying, oh, well, yeah, me and my guy friends, Todd and Apollo, we go to the strip club all the time and it's no big deal. I mean, we don't go there necessarily to talk to the dancers or anything. Every now and then I will pay for a dancer to dance on them, but that's it. It's nothing crazy. I'm not going there to look at anybody specifically. Candy, she's looking at Peter like,
First of all, Peter, why are you lying?
but Peter, obviously he's trying to avoid eye contact because he's obviously lying. And then he's looking at Candy like, what happened, Candy? Yeah, me and Todd go. And Candy was just like,
exactly, Peter. That's why you're making me very uncomfortable because when I went to the strip club with you, there was a stripper on your lap. She was dancing for you. So now you're saying the complete opposite. Oh,
Peter was just like, wait, what? Of course, just caught up in a lie. So of course, now he has to pretend like to play dumb. Cynthia, she's just looking down in shame like, yeah, I knew this already. But eventually Peter was just like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. It is what it is. And then Apollo, then he starts putting his foot in his mouth because Apollo, he admits, oh, when I go to the strip club, if I have $5,000, which I do, that's how much I spend at the strip club. And I'm like, $5,000? I mean, I might do a $20 bill here and there, but $5,000, Apollo, like what? And then remember at the time, I believe allegedly he was running like a whole Jen Shah scheme, like a whole, like not telemarketing, but he was doing some type of conspiracy with like fraud with money, and that's why he went to jail for all this time. So when he said this, I'm like, oh, red flag, red flag, red flag. You know, obviously it just goes to show that even before Erica Jane, Tom, and Jen Shah, you know, we had criminals on the Real Housewives, starting with Apollo. Allegedly, but then Nene, she was just like $5,000, Apollo, really? He starts arguing with them like, yeah, if it's my money, why not? I could spend it. She was just like, well, you could spend that on your kids. Kenya, she tries to put her 2 cents in like, oh yeah, I mean, I just feel like that's a huge amount of money to be spending at a strip club. And what do y'all think? Do y'all have a certain limit at strip clubs? How much money would you, be willing to spend? I mean, like I said, my limit is $20. It depends. We're on a budget, but eventually Nene, she just flips the entire conversation and she was just like, okay. We need to keep it all the way real. So Kenya, you said that Natalie and Chris, they were like common law, like they were in a common law marriage. Would you want to address that? And I'm like, Nene, what? Like, again, this is exactly why Nene wanted Kenya to be there so badly and why she was so upset and pacing back and forth, because she needed Kenya to ask her that question face to face. So then I believe Natalie, she starts addressing the whole room and she was just like, oh yeah, Kenya, she apparently said that me and my husband Chris, we're common law and that's not cool. And if you notice carefully, this is where things started going left. Again, because Chris, he gets up. Kenya, she never got up. Chris starts getting up and he starts, pretending as if he's going to go get a plate of food, but he's not. He's just hovering around over everybody. And then I believe Nene asked him, so Chris, are you going to leave? Chris was like, no, I'm not leaving. Portia, she tries to direct him to sit back down because, again, everybody's supposed to be sitting down. She was just like, are you going to take a seat? He was just like, no, I'm going to stand up for this. And I'm like, oh, so, this goes into play about what we're about to discuss in a second, but Nene never told Chris, sit back down, sit back down, sit back down. She let him stand. So then Chris was just like, you know what, Kenya, I need to address you. So then Kenya's just looking at him like, what? So he was just like, I don't know what type of medication you're on. And I'm like, ooh. I'm like, here we go. And then Brandon swore that he was in a telenovela because he was just like he just could not believe that he said that. And Kenya, Kenya being quick with it. She was just like, the same medication that you're on. I don't care what anybody says. Kenya was always my favorite, even back then. So then, next thing you know, I believe Kenya, she starts going back and forth with Chris. And then Natalie was like, oh, don't backpedal now. Don't backpedal now. You said what you said. Kenya, she wasn't backpedaling. She was just trying to address what she said. So she gets up. She starts walking towards Natalie. And I'm not really sure what exactly she was going to do. Kenya, I don't think she was trying to get physical with her. I think that she was just trying to make a point. Next thing you know, Chris, Natalie's husband, he grabs Kenya by the arm as she walks by him to turn her around. And to me, even back then, even now, I never liked that, the way he snatched her up. I mean, he could have just gotten in the way and spread his arms like this, like, no, don't go in front of my wife. But to grab her like that, I never liked that. So then Brandon, in his silky pajamas, he gets up and he was just like, oh, don't touch her. Don't touch her. And then Kenya, she snatches her arm. She was just like, don't touch me. Don't touch me. Next thing you know, Peter, Center Peach Thomas, in his white robe, he gets up, he gets in between them. He was just like, okay, whoa, no. And then he's pulling Brandon back as if Brandon is the one that started all of this, the physical altercation to begin with. It was Chris who touched Kenya to begin with on the arm by snatching her up like that. Again, what do y'all think? Do y'all think that it was right for Chris to do that in the first place or not? Chris, he pushes Brandon. Brandon, he goes flying. And it's Battle of the Power Rangers, the red Power Ranger versus the blue Power Ranger, because they started shoving each other. Peter, again, he goes after, he pushes Brandon, and then Apollo, I'm not sure what Apollo's whole role in this whole thing was. Apollo gets up, next thing you know, he grabs Brandon, he pushes him to the beanbag chair and starts punching him and starts swinging on him. Brandon, he gets him in a slight headlock. They both start swinging on each other. Peter, Center Peach Thomas, he pins Brandon down, and I'm like, what is going on here? Chris is obviously the one that wanted to do something physical, yet we're all holding Brandon down. And Apollo is the strongest one in the room, yet they're all holding Brandon down as if he's overpowering him in the first place. Even though both of them were swinging at each other, though. Apollo was swinging on him, but Brandon was swinging back. So then Phaedra, she gets up, she grabs a piece of Apollo's shirt. She starts pulling him back like, get off, get off, get off. That didn't do anything. Kenya, she gets up, she grabs the other end of his shirt. They're both pulling on him like, get off Brandon, get off Brandon. Apollo, he looks back at Phaedra, and what does he do? He pushes her to get off his shirt, and then he goes back to swinging on Brandon. I'm like, wow, Apollo, really? That is your own wife. And I know that was probably so embarrassing and humiliating for Phaedra. Like, wow, my own husband, he just completely blacked out. I don't know what Apollo's issue was. I mean, everything was going fine. It's not like, anything happened between you and Brandon prior to this. So I'm not sure what the issue was. It was all between him and Chris. I'm not sure why Apollo just decided to just let off steam on Brandon. So eventually Kenya, she's grabbed up by a producer because all of a sudden a bunch of producers, and I'm saying a bunch of producers. I'm talking about the producers of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, New Jersey, Miami the reboot, Dallas, Dubai, New Jersey, New York, all of the producers, they all started coming out of nowhere. They started holding everybody back, and they finally separated Apollo and Brandon from each other. And then Candy's ex, Chuck, I see why he's an ex now, Candy, because Chuck, as everything is going down, he is the one person that's hiding behind a bookshelf. If you look closely, he was literally next to the bookshelf like this. I hope they don't see me. I'm like, Chuck, what are you doing? Like, it looked like he was trying to see if they had a Harry Potter series. So Kenya's looking around for Brandon because the producer had grabbed her and separated her from the group. So she walks out of the room to go into a different room. Nene, she sees her, so she follows right behind her. She corners her in a room, and she was just like, Kenya, you should have never gotten out of your seat. Look what happened because of what you did. You should have never gotten out of your goddamn seat. And I'm like, Nene, what is wrong with you? Like, this whole situation started because of Chris, and technically because of you. You're the one that put the question out there. So what did you expect to happen? Like, what, for them to just shake hands and hug? No. And Chris, you saw Chris get up. You even questioned him. Oh, hey, Chris, are you leaving? Yet you never had an issue with him getting up. But the second that Kenya got up, oh, all of a sudden the whole thing is her fault. So no, if you're going to blame her, also blame Chris equally, and blame yourself as well. Meanwhile, back in the main room, Phaedra is telling Apollo, why are you acting like this? You have children to take care of. You should not be behaving like this. Apollo, his shirt is coming undone. So what does he do next? Apollo just, he kind of just takes off his shirt, and now he's just walking around shirtless, and anyway, so he sees Brandon across the room, so he starts charging at him again. Phaedra, she's trying to stop him again. She was just like, Apollo, no! It did not work. He kept charging at him, unfortunately, but luckily, all the producers, Peter, Center, Peach, Thomas, Greg, Nene's husband, rest in peace, they also jumped in it like, no, stop right there. Portia and her sister Lauren, they got up. She was not feeling this whole situation, so she tells Nene,
Nene, I don't like this situation, so me and my sister Lauren are gonna leave. We didn't come here to fight. I'm not putting up with any of this, so we're just gonna go, okay?
Eventually, Portia and Lauren leave, as well as Kenya and Brandon. Phaedra, she's trying to calm Apollo down in the hallway. Meanwhile, everybody else, they're all in the main room. Nene, she's walking around pretending to be stressed about this whole situation. Like, what happened? What happened with this whole night? I thought we were just here for a nice get-together. We were gonna play games. Why is everybody fighting? What happened? And I'm like, Nene, so you mean to tell me that you didn't see this whole situation coming from a mile away? This is basically a domino effect that you technically started. So now all of a sudden you're pretending to be shocked about it? Why? But Chuck, he's trying to explain to everybody what his issue with Kenya was and why he accused her of being on medication. So that was that. Because Candy, she wanted some answers from his wife, Natalie, as well. She was just like, okay, Kenya got round 1, I got round 2.
Chuck, I got a question for your wife, Natalie. Natalie, why did you accuse my husband, Todd, of being an opportunist or coming up, as you said, huh?
So then Natalie was just like, what? No, I never said that. So the issue was that Natalie, she went on to tell Cynthia that she feels that Todd, which is Candy's husband, is the opportunist. Even back then, they were still calling him that. Even to the recent season, people are still calling Todd an opportunist. And that he came up because he married Candy. And, obviously Candy has money. So obviously he moves from person to person trying to better his life. And that was her whole thing that she told Cynthia. What did Cynthia do? She told Candy, and Candy now has an issue with that. Natalie, she's trying to backpedal and say, oh, no, but that was my friend, like, because he used to date my friend and all this and all that, and none of that mattered, right? So Candy was just like,
honestly, Natalie, we don't really care, like, who Todd used to date. I want to know, why did you say that he was an opportunist? Like, why did you say that he was basically hopping from person to person?
So then Cynthia, I'm not sure what Cynthia's issue was, because Cynthia, then she hopped in it and she was in Candy's face because Candy had gotten up. She was getting closer to Natalie, but Cynthia was getting closer to Candy, and she was just like, no, Candy, listen to me. The thing is, Natalie, she said a lot of nice things about Todd, and not only bad things, but she said some really nice things about Todd. Candy, again, she was trying to tell Cynthia, like, no, okay, like, yeah, she may have said a couple of nice things about Todd, but she also said those mean things about him too. I want to know why. Cynthia, she was just not letting it go. She was just like, first of all, Candy, it does not matter. It does not matter what she said. The thing is that she said a lot of nice things about Todd. And I'm like, Cynthia, what is going on? Like, does Natalie know something about you that we should know? Like, what's happening? Why are you protecting her so much? Like, okay, I get it. Like, she said some nice things, but again, she also said some bad things about Todd that we need to address. And she keeps waving her hands in Candy's face, and Candy's just looking at her like, why are you waving your hands in my face? Why are you getting closer to me like this? Like, this is way too much. Like, what's happening? Next thing you know, Peter Centerpeach Thomas was trying to earn his peach for that season, because he starts walking in between them with his chest all out like this, like, wait a minute, Candy, what's going on here? What's happening? So then he did that. Of course, Todd, Candy's husband, he's going to get defensive. So he starts backing up like, okay, what's happening? And then Mallory, Cynthia's sister, she starts closing in too. And I'm like, okay, what's happening? What's going on? Candy, obviously she feels that the numbers are against them because it's like 5 of them on 2. Peter Centerpeach Thomas, he starts telling both of them, yeah, both of you are moving real funny right now. Both of you are acting really strange right now. And I'm like, what? Just because Candy was asking a question to Natalie and your wife, she jumped in it for no reason. Now they're acting funny? Why, Peter? Like, you know, even back then, even back then he was messy. So then Candy was just like,
Peter, this does not have anything to do with you, so relax. This is not about you right now.
So then I believe Todd and Peter, eventually they get to like kind of like pushing each other just a little bit. And I believe it was Mallory, Cynthia's sister, and I was never too fond of Mallory to begin with, like ever. She pushes Todd away from Peter. And I'm like, Mallory, why are you trying to jump in it? And why are you getting physical in the first place? Like, this has nothing to do with you. Like, are you fucking Peter too? Like, like, if anything, Cynthia, okay, it could be a 2 versus 2, but why are you jumping into this? So then as soon as Candy saw her touch Todd, her reflexes, because she lunged at her, and right before she even laid her fingers on her, Todd, he snatched Candy up like, no, come over here. You still need to make music. Come on, let's go. You need to have like 10 more spinoffs on Bravo. Let's go. I'm like, wow. But again, if she would have grabbed Mallory, it would have been deserved, because Mallory, I'm not sure why you were pushing people to begin with. And Candy, she's being held back. She starts crying and screaming. She was just telling Todd, like, let go of me. Eventually, they put her at the very corner of the room behind a piano. Nene's trying to calm her down. Mallory, she starts talking shit like, oh, I'm gonna whip her ass tonight. I'm like, Mallory, please. Like, even you don't believe that. Cut it out. Like, I was so shocked at how this whole situation spiraled out of control. Like, the other situation, okay, but this one, what happened, Mallory? Like, why are you jumping in it? And Cynthia, you should tell your sister, like, don't do that again. Candy, she's over there yelling, and then this is where she performed her infamous line,
I will drag you in this bitch.
One of my favorite Candy lines out of all time. And I believe it too. If it wasn't for Todd, Mallory, I don't know what would have happened to you. Eventually, Candy, she's trying to calm herself down. They put her in a bathroom. Phaedra, she pops up out of nowhere. And it was so sad to rewatch this, because Phaedra and Candy, they had a real friendship, and it's just so sad. It's sad the way it ended. She's in there trying to relax her, like, relax, calm down. Before you go back in there, just breathe. Don't go in there doing anything crazy. Nene, she was just like, oh, you got businesses. And I'm like, Nene, cut it out. Eventually, Todd and Peter, Centerpiece Thomas, they were talking about, the miscommunication. Like, I just felt defended. Like, you were coming at me, I was coming at you. It was nothing. I guess they kind of apologized to each other. Candy, she came back into the room. She didn't want anything to do with Peter. She was just like,
move, Peter. I'm not here to talk to you. Let's go, Todd.
Todd was just like, wait, no, hold on, give me 1 second. Candy, she was not having it. She told Todd,
let's go, Todd.
Eventually, both of them just left, and that was that. And Nene just kept repeating herself, like, what happened? What happened? Why are we fighting? Like, okay, Nene. And that was the Pillow Talk episode. And I believe to this very day, that specific episode still holds the record for the highest ratings of any episodes of The Real Housewives of Atlanta. And I can see why, too. It was so much going on. Now, who do I think is to blame for the whole Pillow Talk fight to begin with? Nene. Surprise, surprise. I mean, not completely, but Nene was just looking for a reason to be upset with Kenya because, yeah, I get it that Kenya was late to your event, but there's no reason for you to try to drag her in front of everybody like that for no reason. Just because she was just late to your event, it's never that serious, Nene. So she was looking for a reason to be upset with her, to cause a fight, to instigate something between her, Chris, and Natalie specifically. And then on top of that, it was also Chris's fault for getting out of his seat. It was also Nene's fault for not telling him, hey, sit your ass down, even though she put the whole blame on Kenya, like, Kenya, you need to sit down, you need to sit down, you need to sit down. But Chris, he was just walking around freely and nobody said anything to him. So Chris and Nene were both to blame. I'm not sure about Kenya. Kenya, all she did was defend herself in my eyes, but what do you all think? Do you think that it was also Kenya's fault, Brandon's fault, Apollo's fault, Mallory's fault, the production's fault? Let me know whose fault do you think it is for this whole Pillow Talk situation in the first place. Let me know down in the comments. Bye, everybody. Mwah.